Imagine waking up each morning feeling trapped by bills, rent, and the endless cycle of expenses, noticing that no matter how hard you work, your money never seems to stretch far enough. At first, it feels like a personal failure, but the reality is far more systemic and deeply mathematical. Today, we're exploring why being poor is so expensive, not as a moral judgment, but as a structural phenomenon rooted in financial psychology, economic systems, and the hidden mechanics of money itself. Understanding these forces can shift the way we think about spending, borrowing, and long-term financial decisions. The first layer is psychological. Scarcity changes the way our brains process choices. When cash is tight, cognitive bandwidth narrows, forcing us to focus on immediate needs. Urgent payments like rent, utilities, or groceries dominate attention, leaving little mental space for planning or comparison shopping. Behavioral economists have shown that scarcity makes small financial mistakes feel catastrophic, increasing stress and leading to reactive rather than proactive decision-making. This isn't just theory, it's observable in everyday spending patterns, where higher interest loans, late fees, and emergency purchases compound the financial strain of low income. Consider the mathematics of interest. A single payday loan, often taken out to cover a short-term emergency, might charge 15 to 30% interest per month. Borrowing $500 under these terms can easily balloon into $1,000 in just a few months. When every expense carries hidden or overt financial penalties, the effective cost of living rises dramatically, and the money that exists is eaten away before it can contribute to saving or investment. Compare this to someone with a higher income who can pay the same $500 without incurring high fees or interest. The math clearly shows that low income status inherently carries higher expenses over time, creating a structural disadvantage beyond mere earnings. Another systemic factor is the cost of access. Essential goods and services, insurance, quality groceries, healthcare, are often more expensive for those without financial stability. Bulk buying and subscription services often require upfront capital, effectively discounting the wealthy and penalizing the poor. Transportation offers a parallel. Owning a reliable car may seem costly, but ride shares or high-interest vehicle rentals for short-term needs accumulate far more over time. This is not a coincidence, but a systemic mechanism in which liquidity, or the lack thereof, dictates the cost of participating in the economy. Historical examples further illustrate this principle. During the 1930s, lower-income households in the United States faced higher prices for staple goods in some urban areas compared to wealthier neighborhoods, a phenomenon documented in economic studies of the era. The pattern repeats in modern times through predatory lending, rent-to-own schemes, and overdraft fees, demonstrating that financial systems are often structured to generate higher relative costs for those with fewer resources. It is not a failure of effort, but a reflection of embedded economic dynamics that disproportionately burden the financially vulnerable. Financial psychology intersects strongly with these systemic factors. When money is tight, cognitive load increases, leading to what researchers call tunneling, focusing narrowly on urgent short-term problems while ignoring long-term planning. This creates a cycle in which immediate financial pressures drive choices that further exacerbate scarcity, such as paying high fees to avoid late payments, buying small quantities at higher per-unit prices, or missing opportunities for investment and compounding growth. The brain's natural response to scarcity, while adaptive in evolutionary terms, becomes costly within the modern financial ecosystem. Now let's quantify the impact. Imagine two households with identical consumption needs. Household A earns $30,000 per year, while household B earns $90,000. Household A might pay $15 extra per week for convenience items, $50 in overdraft fees, and $200 annually in high-interest loans. Household B, with liquidity and access, avoids these costs. Over 10 years, Household A may spend an extra $20,000 on penalties and premium services. The math shows that income itself is only part of the story. Structural financial costs make the lower-income household effectively poorer over time, even with the same expenditure habits. This brings us to hidden wealth thresholds. Economists often note that certain financial advantages only activate above specific income levels. For example, the ability to invest in index funds, access low-interest credit, or purchase insurance without punitive premiums requires a baseline of disposable income. Crossing these thresholds significantly reduces the effective cost of living and opens the door to compounding growth. Until then, lower-income households face structural taxes on their spending that higher-income households avoid. This is why being poor is expensive. The financial system creates thresholds where cost structures dramatically shift in favor of those with capital. Behavioral adaptations also emerge. Scarcity encourages short-term financial decisions that mitigate immediate pain but create long-term inefficiencies. Payday loans, rent-to-own products, and high-interest credit cards are not choices born of laziness, but rational responses to immediate scarcity. Understanding the psychology behind these choices reframes judgment as insight, revealing that the expense of poverty is as much about system design as it is about personal behavior. Economic cycles amplify these dynamics. During downturns, lower-income households are more likely to lose jobs or face sudden costs, and because they lack a buffer, they must rely on high-cost alternatives. Higher-income households, insulated by savings or diversified income streams, experience minor adjustments. The systemic design of markets, from credit scoring to retail pricing, often converts scarcity into recurring expense loops, creating a persistent cost differential that compounds across years or decades. Finally, the identity shift. Recognizing that being poor is expensive is not about cultivating guilt, but about understanding how systemic forces interact with psychology and math. It allows for more informed decision-making, prioritization of liquidity, and strategic use of financial tools where possible. Knowledge of these mechanisms enables more rational navigation of expenses, debt, and savings, transforming financial behavior from reactive survival to informed participation. In conclusion, the high cost of poverty is neither anecdotal nor incidental. It is deeply mathematical, behavioral, and systemic. Scarcity narrows cognitive bandwidth. Interest and fees magnify short-term borrowing. Access costs penalize low liquidity, and historical economic patterns reinforce these outcomes. By seeing these mechanisms clearly, we can identify opportunities to mitigate structural disadvantages, prioritize long-term planning, and understand money not as a personal failing, but as a complex system we inhabit. Awareness, subtle strategy, and patience replace myth and moral judgment, providing a calm, analytical framework for understanding why financial scarcity is costly. Understanding this system is the first step towards navigating it more effectively, allowing for measured choices, strategic resource allocation, and the gradual unlocking of thresholds that reduce the hidden expenses of low income. And while there are no shortcuts or guarantees, the power of knowledge allows us to operate within the system more intelligently and with greater clarity.